How do everybody? So we've got a bit of an update now on Britain's obviously chaotic and insane plan to accelerate the process of World War III landing at our feet. Now we've all seen on obviously the reports of Zelensky getting thrown out of the White House and the US saying that they're not going to um, back Ukraine. I do think that is something that the US has spoken about previously anyway, and hasn't been a massive surprise to many people if you've known where to listen to. The US has stated in the past that they want to focus more on China and that Europe should focus on Russia. So that in and of itself isn't really much of a surprise. The trouble is, always, as everybody knows, is that Europe is a stagnating economy. That includes the UK. The industry has all been shipped overseas. They've done everything that they can to drag our over, and this isn't just recently, this is like over the past 40, 50 years. They've been shipping industry overseas, they've been closing down power plants, they've been trying to scale back militaries. It's just been insane, and even encouraging people not to have kids as well, with all the doom and gloom of net zero and all that crap as well. So it is quite deluded that they then suddenly all want to make a U-turn and then take us into military action against Russia in a fashion that we can't do, because Russia's been building up to these wars for nearly 15 years now. They've been getting their economy geared towards this, and the entire time we've just been scaling back and scaling back. I mean, we could rearm, but it's going to take time. But I don't also think that we've got the patriotic feeling within people in Europe anymore, with all the mass immigration and the divided societies that we now have in Europe. But anyway, I want to enter this story. This is from the Mail Online. I will put the link below. Do read it yourself. Make your own mind up, obviously. But it's quite telling. This I have already read this article, unusually for me, but I found it that interesting. I really wanted to read it first, get a good handle on it before presenting it in a video. And it's very telling, this, because it just shows you the disdain that they actually have for us as the indigenous population, and just how they really do put their own ideology and their own thoughts and their own sort of pet projects above the British people themselves. So here we go. Britain's rearming drive. Rachel Reeves to slash welfare by £5 billion and unlock billions for defence spending by repurposing £28 billion National Wealth Fund used for green infrastructure. Yeah, you did hear that correctly. So don't forget, guys, while we've been having our bills going up, while we've been having inflation, things like lockdown, while we've been struggling to pay power, our power bills, they won't change any of that stuff for us as people to help us out in our pocket. But what they will do is they will suddenly, these things that they supposedly love and cherish very, very deeply, because let's not forget, whenever the Tories proposed cutting welfare, Labour was screeching from the rafters about how that's evil and how they are basically Nazis for doing that. And anybody who's been against green infrastructure and net zero has been called a climate denier, and basically has been accused of wanting to kill the entire world through pollution. All of a sudden now they want to drop bombs on Russians in Ukraine. They can suddenly reverse those things. Again, guys, this is why I always say, and I've not said this phrase for quite a long time, but don't listen to what they say. Look at what they do, and you'll see exactly where the motivations lie and what it is that they want. And it's just nakedly clear that these people are warmongers, that they just hate people. They hate civilization. They hate us, because their actions are telling us that they will do nothing to help us. They will raise and raise and raise our taxes, and then they'll get involved in foreign wars that we have no right or ability to even get ourselves involved in. But here we go. Rachel Reeves has moved to pump billions of pounds more into boosting the UK's defences as the NATO crisis deepens. Another thing as well with this is we've got this Chagos Island. They call it a deal, but it's not. For those who don't know, there's an island in the Pacific Ocean called the Chagos Islands. There's a military base on there that the US has for a naval base. The island is British owned, and for some weird reason, we're giving it to Mauritius, who've never had a claim to the Chagos Islands, and then we're going to be paying them billions and billions of pounds to keep the US military base on there for like 100 years or something. It makes absolutely no sense. We're not even selling it to them. We're paying them for them to take it off us. It's such a stupid deal. It just makes no sense whatsoever. It's preposterous. It's insane. But again, that's the mindset of these people. The Chancellor, oh, sorry, but the point I was making with that is money that they're freeing up. Now, Labour haven't confirmed this, but they also haven't denied it either. They were asked the question is money that is being freed up from various areas that's going into defence, is that being then used to fund this Chagos deal, and that is being counted as defence spending? And the Prime Minister just categorically refused to answer that question. So we can class, in my opinion, that this giveaway of this Chagos Island as being part of this fraudulent cover-up of the of defence spending for NATO. It's just all cloak and daggers. Like we're not actually going to end up with more bombs and tanks or soldiers. It's just money just getting thrown around and wasted, like we've seen with Doors, really. Another part that they do as well is they include war pensions in defence spending as well. So when you've got some guy who's like 90 years old and he's getting his war pension, he's classed, that man receiving his pension is classed as defence spending. You know, just to give you a quick insight into the madness of the way that they cook the books. So previously, public-private investment vehicle had been focused on infrastructure projects such as green energy schemes. Well, just throwing money away like we Doge. That is just money for the mates. There's a guy called, well, no, I'm not going to mention him. Make your own research into Vince Dale and his donations to the Labour Party and how much money he's received from the government for his businesses. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong because that man is very litigious. But just make your own mind up on if you think that there's not something underhand going on there. I'm not suggesting there is, but I think it's interesting for people to make their own minds up. The movie is designed to avoid deep cuts. We missed a bit there. Meanwhile, the government is trying to ease pressure on the public finances by cutting welfare. Some £5 billion of savings are being penciled in, with the long-term sick set to face more work conditions. So remember, guys, if you are incapable of working and you're needing to receive benefits to help you survive because you're very, very ill, guess what? You'd best get a job and start paying your taxes, because Ukraine needs goddamn bombs and we don't care how crippled and ill you are. You're going to work for Ukraine and you're going to make sure more white boys die over there. All right, guys? So don't think that just because you're ill that you ain't going to get hit by this, because Labour are the party that cares. They really are the party that cares, you know, and they care about wars. Labour really do care. Because don't forget, they took us into Afghanistan and Iraq as well. That was Labour. You know, now they're going to take us into Ukraine. The move is designed to avoid deep cuts or more tax rises in the spring. After higher borrowing costs and stalling growth dealt huge blows to Miss Reeves' plans. Well, of course they did, because the plans are absolutely insane. These people are going to be driving us into a civil war at some point. We're going to start seeing a lot of civil unrest with what they're doing to the country. We're going to start seeing a lot of businesses going belly up, especially small ones, with this national insurance contribution that employers are going to have to make. So it's not so bad for the bigger employers, but for small to medium-sized employers, a lot of those are going to start hitting the wall soon, because they're just not going to be able to make the required payments that are needed. So because they're not doing things like cutting energy prices and stuff like that for people, and even drilling for gas and oil in our own country to try and ease these costs, or building new power plants, unfortunately a business can only operate for so long in a highly strained economic system, which we do have. It's very, very strained. It's almost impossible for businesses to open up now in the UK. The UK and European allies are scrambling to make a step change in military capabilities as the US distances itself from the Ukraine war. Yeah, again, as I've said, this is something that the US have been signalling about for quite a long time. You know, they have spoken for many, many years about them wanting to pull out of Ukraine and pull out of Europe, and like I say, focus more on China and be more involved in the Pacific sort of area of the world. And they want Europe to start taking a sort of stand for itself. And I did say in one of my other videos the other day as well, this is what's happening at the moment, is what Europe's going to use to start rolling back sorts of things like generous welfare. You know, they're going to use this as an excuse to start dealing with mass migration, because up until now, without losing face on their own ideology, they've not had the excuse to be able to do an about turn and change tack on these sort of vanity projects that they've been engaged in for the last sort of 20 years. So now, when it comes to engaging in a war, they're going to be able to say things like, right, we have to start centralising power in Europe. We have to start getting control of these migrant communities in our different countries. We have to start stripping back people's civil liberties and things like that, you know. And again, they're going to try and bring in conscription under the guise of national security. I'm telling you now, it's going to happen. Keir Starmer announced last week that the UK will be spending 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2027, with the aid budget being slashed to free up the money. I mean, again, with the aid budget, people have been asking for like 10 years for that to get removed because it's just wasted on foreign vanity projects and basically warlords backpocketing the money to enrich themselves. It's just insane. But they can't do it for us to reduce our taxes. You know, I heard the other day if they were to scrap the foreign aid budget completely, every single household in Britain could be given £1,000 a year. You could the government could just give you a cheque for £1,000 instead. You know, if you live in Britain, every home in Britain could get that once a year. You know, they won't do that for us, but they will do it to drop bombs on people in Ukraine. Don't forget that, guys. Never ever forget that. That is their priority. Dropping bombs on people in Ukraine. Not improving our lives and helping us out. No. They're going to increase our taxes. They're going to drive our businesses to the wall, and then they're going to start stealing things like farmers' land off us. You know, that's what these people are about. They are not about helping us. They are about dropping bombs on people in Ukraine. That's what they're interested in. And mass migration as well. Miss Reeves signed a multi-billion-pound UK-Ukraine bilateral loan agreement yesterday, making the first time money from sanctioned Russian assets will be used for military purposes. Vladimir's, and that's another point, guys. By the way, guys, they did seize a lot of Russian assets at the very beginning of the war. Froze assets. I think Chelsea Football Club was one thing, which was owned by Roman Abramovich, and they sold it. If they can do that to those people, they can do it to you, and they can do it to me. You know, we have precedents of this throughout recent history. In I think it was the 1920s, around the Great Depression, Americans seized everybody's gold. You know, the American government, they said nobody could hold any substantial amounts of gold. Things like maybe a wedding ring you were allowed to have, but anything sort of beyond that you were not allowed to have. And that was up until about the 1960s or 70s when that rule got replaced. So don't ever think that they can't do it to you, because believe you me, they will start raiding. I was saying to my mum yesterday on the phone, I wouldn't be surprised if they started raiding people's pensions soon and people's shares holdings and things like that. That'll be the next thing that'll come in. They'll start taxing those into oblivion. Like at the moment, I think the first 25% of people's private pensions is tax-free. And then after that, I think that's if you withdraw it early. So if you take the lump sum out of your private pension rather than pensioning it to yourself normally, they take your first 25% free and then they tax the rest of it. And they'll be taxing that next as well. So 100% of your pension will get taxed if you withdraw the lump sum. You know, they are desperate for money, and they're going to start clawing it back from everywhere they can. And I'm telling you now, it won't be long before they start doing capital gains taxes and things like that as well. He wrote on X, the funds will be directed towards weapons production in Ukraine. I thank the people and the government of the United Kingdom for their tremendous support from the very beginning of this war. European officials are said to be developing proposals for a new funding mechanism based on looser debt rules. Miss Reeve, I mean, what are they going to do when Ukraine loses this war and they have no way of paying this back as well? It's just madness. Miss Reeves told the Sunday Times that the world has changed. Yeah, it has changed big time, and we have to keep up with that. Yeah, the rules-based fantasy from the 20th century is dead. We are going back to strongman politics, and it is the age of empires is returning, guys. I'm telling you now. It's going to be like something from the bloody 18th or 16th century. You know, think like bloody Byzantium and the more empire and things like that. You know, that's what we're going. That is genuinely what we're going back to. Local, regional powers having influence in their backyard, and that'll be it. Not all this global crap is gone. The importance of hard power of securing our defence is clearly more important today than it has been for a long time, she said. Yeah, and people have been saying this for decades, and they've done nothing about it. They laugh. People like me have said that. I've actually said this to people, that we need weapons production, we need tanks, we need hard power, because words on their own are nothing. Words are not power. People go, oh, the pen is mightier than the sword. No, it's not. You hold a pen up and somebody will slash you with a sword. Who's got the power there? It's the bloody sword every single time. Power is power. And never forget that, guys. This is just, it's absolutely insane. And people go, well, it's actually about signing deals and writing legislation stuff. No, it's not. Because tell that to every single bloody country that's been overthrown by a general who's decided he's had enough. You know, power is power. Everything else is BS to back up to justify the power. And that's the end of it with that, I'm afraid. Given the circumstances we face, we couldn't carry on spending what we were on defence and being able to say that we were comfortable. I mean, it's like we've got laws in countries saying things like "do not murder," If somebody breaks into your house and starts stabbing to you to death, are you going to go, oh, I've got this piece of paper here that says murders against the law, you're not allowed to stab me. That's the power of the pen. No, they don't care. They're just going to stab you to death. And unless you use force to defend yourself and use equal or excessive power, you're going to get stabbed to death. You know, it's just, these people are just stupid. They live in an absolute fantasy world, playing too many bloody board games, or, you know, they've worked in an office too long. You know, they're so ingrained within the bureaucratic system, they're incapable to think outside of that sort of like legalistic, jingoistic framework of where where like people can actually use an army and invade your country. You know, where planes can fly over and start dropping bombs on your house, or where missiles can be fired from ships and submarines and start blowing up cities. Like, they're just absolute retards, these people. They're stupid. Lunatics. Given the circumstances we faced, we couldn't carry on spending what we were on defence and being able to say that we were comfortable with that. We were never comfortable with what they were spending the money on in the first place anyway, but they just kept doing it anyway because, well, they're at their garden parties in Soho and places like that, and they're having their friends around and they're going, look how nice we are because we bring all these lovely migrants in and we're spending all this money on people who are claiming to be ill. Aren't we so kind and generous? And listen to those grognards and barbarians talking about that we need tanks and guns to defend ourselves. Don't they know we live in the world's-based order? A rules-based order? They're fools. That's all it's about. It's the playing games with each other. It's like playground politics and popularity rather than doing what needs to be done. You know, these people are the psychopaths, I think, half of them. And that's the problem, is they play the point scoring to try and climb up the greasy pole. And that's what a lot of these. You see, we've seen this throughout history as well. And bloody Henry VIII dealt with them, right? Because he saw them for exactly what they were, which was greasy pole climbing scumbags who were trying to line their own pockets. You know, and unfortunately, I'm not saying Henry VIII was a great guy either. He made a lot of mistakes, but at least he called them out for what they were and saw what they were. You know, and that's what we're seriously lacking these days, is strong leadership. You know, like from an actual strong man who can see these bloody quislings for what they are. Work and Pension Secretary Liz Kendall teed up the welfare curb today, which could cause unrest on the Labour benches. Yeah, well, it will do. It absolutely will do. I think it was Annalisa Dodds the other day resigned over these cuts that they're making to things like welfare spending. I'm going to start seeing a lot more because Labour is not a unified party, guys. They really aren't. They're very fractured, and we're going to start seeing cracks in the Labour now because they're having to make big boy decisions here. Stuff's getting real. You know, the poo's hitting the proverbial fan, so to speak. And this is where they're going to be tested on their actual morals and what people in their own constituencies are going to be saying to them as well. So for too long, millions of people have been locked out of work, and we've been left with a spiralling benefits bill, which is far higher than in many comparable countries. Well, haven't they made a U-turn on that? Because for like the last 14 years at least, they've been telling us how we need more spending on benefits. Now, cruel and callous we are for not handing out even more money to people on benefits. You just can't make this crap up with these people. I genuinely believe Labour don't believe anything what they say. They just say what they think will help them in their career, and that is it. These people have got no principles as far as I'm concerned. Like, they will just speak out of both sides of the mouth at the same time. This is terrible for people, for business, and our economy. Wow, yeah, you've done all that damage already in less than 6 months of being in power. And don't forget the Tories. I mean, we started it as well. Years of drift and mismanagement have trapped people on benefits, denied them the support they need, and damaged their living standards, health, and life chances. Well, that's the end of the article, guys. Labour are stuck between a rock and a hard place now. I don't know who's telling Keir Starmer to do what he's doing. I think possibly, maybe ideologically driven. Possibly got Tony Blair whispering in his ear as well, because that man's a warmonger, isn't he? Well, guys, real politics is coming back. We're seeing Labour being forced to make big boy decisions now. Not that I agree with them, but at least they are showing the true colours. We're going to end up in this war in Ukraine. And like I say, don't be surprised if conscription comes back. I'm absolutely convinced it is. And I think we'll end up with British troops getting shot and shooting back at Russians in the not too distant future. And that will be insane if it happens. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for your time. Take care and goodbye.